The fluorescent lights of our classroom hummed a monotonous tune, piercing through my foggy thoughts. I stared blankly at my students' eager faces, their questions unanswered as I sat lost in thought behind my worn desk. My pen hovered over the lesson plan, but my mind was elsewhere, on Susan. It had been months since that fateful evening when everything changed. We were packing for a weekend getaway to an old cabin by the lake, something we'd done every year since our first date. But this time, there was tension in the air, thick as the scent of burnt coffee from the morning's argument over whether we should start a family. As I poured the last dregs into my travel mug, the bitter taste mirrored my mood. We sat at the kitchen island, back stiff and shoulders hunched, the divide between us already more than just an empty chair. "You know, if you really thought this through," Susan began calmly, but her eyes betrayed her calm facade. I sighed, massaging my temples. "We've been over this. I don't want to be a father right now." Her voice rose despite her efforts. "Right now, David, it's not just about now, it's about planning for the future." The argument escalated into something more than words, a shouting match with the ferocity of a summer storm. And in that moment, as I slammed out of the cabin, leaving behind the silence and the coffee, I knew our marriage was teetering on the edge. My phone buzzed on the floor next to my abandoned shoes, but I ignored it. It would be Susan. More pleading, more ultimatums, more attempts at reconciliation that felt hollow now. As for me, I sat in the quiet of the classroom, pretending my life hadn't just unraveled like yesterday's worksheet left too long in the sun. My gaze fell upon a photograph on my desk, a snapshot from our early days, smiling and hopeful. It was pushed to the edge, almost fallen. As if to mirror my heart, it seemed to be teetering between happiness and despair. The students' chatter grew louder as they gathered around their group projects, oblivious to my internal turmoil. I forced a smile for them, a mask hiding the cracks in my facade. My mind wandered back to the car we'd shared, a sensible sedan bought down to the last cent. It was parked outside, another piece of our life up for division like the faded couch that once held so many late-night talks. I couldn't see myself driving it away from this place where we'd laughed and argued together, this school where I'd taught them both afternoons, this city that had been our shared dream. Now, it felt like a prison of memories best left behind. The bell rang out, signaling the end of the day, but for me, time seemed to have stood still at the kitchen island, Susan's words echoing. "You're never here even when you are." I let my head drop into my hands. My marriage was over, and I had no idea where to go from here. The fluorescent lights above my classroom ceiling flickered for a moment before stabilizing, mirroring the instability that gripped my heart. Students began to pack up their belongings, some with eager chatter while others looked to me expectantly for dismissal. I forced another weary smile and raised my voice above theirs. "All right, everyone, let's call it a day. We'll resume tomorrow." Their movements slowed as they absorbed the unexpected reprieve. Glancing around at the young faces that had become my recent solace, I felt the weight of their futures bearing down on me, unwritten lesson plans and unspoken words of encouragement. My mind was still back at the lake cabin with Susan, the tension hanging in the air like a heavy mist that clings to the skin. The sound of her voice echoed in my ears. "You're never here, even when you are." It reverberated through me now, as real as the hum of those lights above. I gathered my belongings and stepped out into the hallway, leaving behind the quiet buzz of students and the sanctuary of familiar routines. My eyes caught on a bulletin board covered in student work, a collage of colors and words that represented hope and growth. It was a stark contrast to the desolation I felt within myself. My phone lay silently on my desk, ignored during class, but now it buzzed with insistent life. Susan's name flashed on the screen, each ring a reminder of our unresolved conflict. With a sigh, I turned off the ringer and slipped it into my pocket, a small rebellion against the constant pressure to engage. As I walked out of the school building towards the sensible sedan parked outside, I couldn't help but think about how this car had once been our shared project. Each decision made jointly, each payment a testament to our teamwork. Now it seemed more like a witness to my absence from home, a symbol of our crumbling unity. A cool breeze carried leaves that were beginning to change colors, an omen for the season of change that lay ahead not just for nature, but for me and Susan. I reached for the door handle and paused, looking back at the school building where so many hours had been spent teaching love and life lessons. The car's interior was quiet, a space filled with memories and moments where we'd once shared laughter and dreams of our own future family. As I slipped into the driver's seat, a faint scent lingered, an old coffee cup left on the passenger side, remnants of a late-night drive home from an argument that never seemed to end. I gripped the steering wheel tightly as if it could anchor me in turbulent waters. My thoughts drifted between past conversations, arguments over finances and futures, none of which seemed so important now when the very foundation of our relationship was crumbling. In my mind's eye, I saw the kitchen island, the place where we'd once made love after late-night talks about life and dreams. Now it felt like a where no truce could be called. My heart clenched as I imagined never sharing that space again with Susan or anyone else. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. I inserted the key into the ignition, fingers hesitating before turning it. The engine roared to life, a stark contrast to my inner silence. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of our classroom window, the fluorescent lights casting an eerie glow in the waning daylight. For now, I had no destination in mind, no plan for where this journey would lead or how it might end. All I could do was drive forward into the unknown with only my thoughts to guide me, a fractured heart navigating towards a future uncertain and rife with possibility. The road stretched out before me, a ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the growing darkness outside the confines of the city's glow. My hands gripped the steering wheel with a mix of anxiety and determination as I drove away from everything that had been my life for so long. Susan's voice still played in my mind like an echo from a distant past, a reminder of what could no longer be ours. The car hummed along, its sensible tires rolling over the familiar path leading out of town toward an unknown future. It took several hours to escape the clutch of our shared memories, the cityscape giving way to more open roads and quieter skies. As night fell, I pulled into a budget motel on the outskirts of a small town, my heart still racing from the hour-long drive that had been as much a mental struggle as it was physical. In the dimly lit room with its faint scent of stale cigarettes and yesterday's cleaning products, I let go of the steering wheel and allowed myself to sit in the quiet. The motel sign outside flickered like a heartbeat, steady, but without warmth or comfort. My phone buzzed relentlessly from the pocket of my discarded jacket, each ring a harbinger of Susan's attempts at connection. I turned it off completely this time, not just silencing the calls, but killing any hope of a reconciliation that seemed as futile as the worn-out carpet beneath my feet. With a deep breath, I opened the car door to let in some night air heavy with autumnal scents and a hint of wood smoke from somewhere nearby. Out here, far from the life we'd built together, I could almost pretend that none of it mattered, the arguments, the silent treatments, or the mornings spent avoiding each other's gazes. The car behind me stood like an abandoned ship in a forgotten harbor, its headlights dim and uninviting. For a moment, I toyed with the idea of leaving it there, allowing it to become another memory lost amidst the detritus of our past life. But something about that notion resonated deep within me, a refusal to surrender everything we'd been, even if it was broken. It was that stubborn flicker of hope that urged me to return to the car and continue my journey. As I drove through the night, the roads grew quieter, leading me deeper into a landscape untouched by time's relentless march. The car became both refuge and prison as I pushed onward with no particular destination in mind. At times, my heart ached so sharply that it felt like I was driving over broken glass, but then something would catch my eye, a shooting star streaking across the sky or the soft glow of a distant town, and for a moment I'd forget to breathe. For a moment, I could believe there was something ahead worth reaching for. With each mile, the pain receded just enough that I could taste hope on the edge of my tongue, the promise of new paths and uncertain futures. The fluorescent lights of my old classroom seemed like a lifetime ago, their hum replaced by the steady thrum of the engine and the quiet rhythm of the road beneath me. I knew then that this journey wasn't about escape. It was about finding where I fit in this vast expanse between who I used to be and who I had yet to become. And perhaps, just perhaps, along the way, I would find a way to heal and rediscover what it meant to truly love someone, together or apart. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon as I drove on into an unknown that felt both daunting and liberating. There was no map for this part of my journey, no lesson plan to follow. All I had was the road beneath me and a heart slowly learning to trust in its ability to heal and move forward. As day broke, casting shadows across the empty roads ahead, I realized that even when everything seemed lost, there was always a way to start again, sometimes on the same path, sometimes forging a new one entirely. And for now, the journey itself was enough, a place where past and future collided, creating a space where I could slowly learn to live with the fracture in my heart and find strength in the pieces left behind. The road unwound before me like an endless piece of paper waiting to be filled with stories yet untold, each mile a chapter in a book that was still being written. And as the first rays of sun illuminated the car's interior, I felt the stirrings of something new, a sense of possibility born from loss and fueled by the will to move forward into whatever lay ahead. The story of my life, once so tightly bound with Susan's, had unraveled in unexpected ways. But now, as morning broke across the horizon, it was time to weave a new narrative, one thread at a time. The journey had begun, and I was ready for wherever it might lead me. The first rays of sunlight filtering through my motel room window bathed everything in an amber glow, illuminating the worn-out furniture and threadbare carpet that had been my temporary refuge. The journey so far had been about fleeing the remnants of my past, but I knew deep down that running was only a part of the equation. At some point, I needed to confront what lay ahead, this new chapter in my life. My phone vibrated on the bedside table, its screen still dark despite the morning light. It buzzed with the persistence of a memory I couldn't shake, a reminder of the life I'd left behind and the relationship that had crumbled into dust. With a heavy sigh, I reached for it, flipping it over to stare at the blank face rather than read Susan's texts that lined the screen. Her words were echoes from another lifetime, and yet they lingered like shadows. I stepped out of the room into the crisp morning air, leaving behind the stale motel air that clung to my skin like a shroud. The small town was awakening around me, its quiet streets and sleepy buildings offering no solace or answers. My car stood alone at the edge of the parking lot, a monument to what we'd once shared. As I approached it, I noticed something strange. Several leaves had found their way into the car's interior during my overnight stay, scattering across the dashboard like tiny, natural artifacts from an archaeological dig. Their vibrant colors contrasted starkly with the dull of the sedan's interior, a reminder that even in desolation, there is still beauty. I slid back into the driver's seat, enveloped by a mix of memories and this unexpected natural intrusion. Perhaps it was symbolic. Just as nature reclaiming a decaying forest could lead to new growth, so too might these leaves herald change within me. With a sense of resolve that felt both foreign and familiar, I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared back to life with a vitality that echoed my newfound determination. The open road beckoned, promising freedom but also uncertainty. As I merged onto the highway, the hum of the tires on asphalt became my rhythm, each passing mile a beat in this new symphony of my life. There were no destinations marked on my GPS, only a blank slate waiting for stories yet to be written. The leaves fluttered slightly with every turn of the steering wheel, their colors muted by the windshield glass but undeniably present. They stayed there as I stopped at a small diner for breakfast, tucked between conversations about the weather and local gossip that held no interest for me. Even when I stepped out into the cool breeze to collect my thoughts by the roadside, they remained in the car, silent witnesses to this liminal space. Eventually, I found myself drawn to a quaint town nestled between rolling hills, its charm undeniable even as I parked at the edge of town and observed it from afar. The place felt like a whispered promise, one that held the potential for connection and community, but also for more heartache and loss. My phone had remained silent throughout my drive here, Susan's attempts at communication swallowed by the void between our worlds. It was time to face this new chapter head-on, to weave into it threads of hope and resilience rather than continue down the path of evasion. With a breath that felt both fragile and strong, I stepped out of the car and onto the sidewalk of this small town. My feet carried me past shops with welcoming facades and parks where children laughed. In one such park, an elderly woman sat on a bench, her eyes kind as she watched me pass by. "Hey there," she called out. "You look like you've been driving for a while." Her voice was a lifeline thrown into the sea of my uncertainty. I turned back to her with a smile that felt genuine for the first time in months. "Yeah, I have. Just got here, actually." "Well, welcome to our town," she said warmly. "You look like you could use some fresh coffee and a good meal. I'm Mabel." Her handshake was firm but gentle, a gesture of acceptance without intrusion. As we chatted, The leaves in my car seemed to recede into the background, their message absorbed by the warmth of human connection. I spent the rest of that day with Mabel, learning about her town and its people, and slowly beginning to knit together a new tapestry for myself. The fluorescent lights of my old classroom had dimmed into memory, replaced by a small town's evening sun that painted everything in hues of gold and amber. As I settled into the local inn, ready for another night but hopeful for what tomorrow might bring, I felt more whole than I had in years. There were still fissures within me, remnants of the fracture that had threatened to consume my entire being. But now, instead of staring into their depths with despair, I looked at them with a sense of possibility. The journey was far from over. It had simply taken on a new shape, one where each mile and every interaction held the promise of growth and healing. The story arc that had once been intertwined with Susan's now unfurled in front of me as a singular narrative, a tale of resilience in the face of loss, and the quiet courage to find hope anew. As I drifted off to sleep, lulled by the distant hum of a small town going about its evening routines, I realized that my life was no longer defined by what had been lost, but by the stories yet to be written. And in that moment of clarity, nestled between rest and tomorrow's possibilities, I finally allowed myself to let go, the leaves of my past gently falling away as I myself for whatever came next. The story of my journey had reached a new chapter, one where love would not be defined by the echoes of heartache, but by the resonance of a life lived with purpose and open arms ready to embrace whatever came into view.